Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we'll have the latest from the live radar. Run for the latest weather warnings, as we have numerous weather warnings issued over the coming days, as we are going to see some really quite significant rain, as we have been alluding to over the past few days. It does look like Monday into Tuesday we are going to see a huge storm system arriving. At the moment it's not been named, but we have got warnings issued, and given the looks of the latest UKV, I wouldn't be surprised if this system did get named, given we are going to see further significant rainfall, especially for southern areas across South Wales and southwest England, which have been really prone to some of that heavy rain over the past few weeks. Could see multiple inches of rain here, and then we are going to see some really strong gusty winds further northwards, widely 60 to 70 miles per hour, even up to 80 or 90 on the latest UKV. So really has ramped up in the last couple of runs. So yeah, wouldn't be surprised to see more widespread warnings issued, and maybe even this system getting named. Again, it's a pretty long-lasting system as well, all the way through Monday evening to the early hours of Wednesday. Longer range, we are continuing to look fairly unsettled, so could see repeats of this sort of pattern as we progress into the middle of the month, but still strong signs that there could be a bit of a change later on heading towards the Christmas period. Whether it's just a slight change, i.e. the areas of precipitation and wind gusts shift around across the UK, or could it be a big pattern change? The GM, like yesterday, is actually suggesting a big pattern change with even easterly winds pushing in, which is a little bit surprising, but it is got some support, and it would be very interesting if that did sort of take off just in time for Christmas. So we'll have a look at that in a little bit more detail in the second half of the video. So do remember, if you enjoy the videos, do like and subscribe. Now, I was recording this around 5 PM on Saturday evening, and we do have heavy showers across much of northern England. It looks pretty abysmal there. Up towards sort of the northwest, lots of heavy thundery showers pushing in off the Irish Sea. Really not great there at all. Elsewhere, there are some other showers around, but they don't look anywhere near as heavy and don't look too bad at all. So, yes, really all the precipitation right now is focused across northwest England and North Wales. Over the coming hours, though, overnight into Sunday morning, we are going to see some rain pushing in. It doesn't look too heavy, but it does look fairly persistent. Most areas seeing at least a few hours of rain as this moves in. You can see just the edges of the weather front now, just coming onto radar across southwest England. And this, as I said, is going to sweep through overnight and perhaps lasting through Sunday morning into the lunchtime sort of period. Now, if you look at the temperatures, you can see it's been a fairly mild day. Temperatures in the double digits, but with stronger winds around and blustery showers and some thicker cloud. It's not felt terribly mild. Yes, it doesn't sort of need hat and gloves right now, but definitely I wouldn't be out there in shorts and a t-shirt. It is still feeling fairly chilly, even though the thermometer temperatures are well above average. Now, if you look at the latest weather warnings, we have got a warning for rain across Northern Ireland during Sunday morning. So that's for some of that heavier rain. It looks like it's going to be a bit heavier across Northern Ireland. It is going to stretch all the way towards the south coast of England. So it's not just a rain event here, but it could be particularly heavy here late Sunday morning into the early hours of the afternoon. So you can see around an inch of rainfall expected, around 15 to 20 millimetres, up towards 30 millimetres in a few spots. Monday into Tuesday, though, this is where that big storm system could arrive. At the moment, we do have a big rain warning issued for South Wales and southwest England. These are where the big flooding we've seen over the past few weeks has been, where we've seen a lot of rain and amber warnings already during the autumn. So here, yellow warning at the moment, but we are looking at, again, another inch or two, 20 to 40 millimetres, maybe some spots even seeing as much as 100 millimetres. And as I've been saying, given the saturated nature of the ground, is likely to lead to some flooding in places and transport disruption. You can see there are going to be strengthening southerly winds, which could exacerbate impacts. At the moment, medium impact, very low likelihood. I suggest that could change in the next sort of 24 to 48 hours as we get nearer to the event. You can see it's from 6 PM on Monday until 6 PM on Tuesday. So still 48 hours away, this system arriving. Still a lot could change. And then into Tuesday, still got that rain warning issued, but I wouldn't be surprised that rain warning got expanded, and we see wind warnings further northwards as the centre of the low moves through later on Tuesday, and it really looks lively, as we'll see now from the latest UKV. So you can see as we head through this evening, showers around, but they're not really going to do too much. They're much heavier earlier in the day. Overnight into Sunday, you see that persistent rain arriving. Overnight into the early hours of the morning, you see it's heaviest across Northern Ireland. Elsewhere, a few heavier pulses, but it's mostly just persistent, light to moderate precipitation. It does clear through for most into the afternoon, but lingers across Scotland into Sunday evening before clearing all areas overnight into Monday. A band of quite heavy, blustery rain there moving in from the west. It looks really quite heavy along that. A little pulse of precipitation, but it doesn't look too bad for most of Monday. Into the evening, though, cloud builds from the southwest, and then you can see the big wall of rain arrives overnight into Tuesday, looking really heavy. You can see a more abundant area of yellows and oranges. That's heavy rain, torrential rain in places pushing in, and you see it sweep through the early hours of Tuesday. It lingers further northwards, and we could see further rain in the south. This looks like it's sort of backed off a little bit in the latest run, as we were seeing some heavier pulses here further southwards, but not as much today, which is a good sign, which means that hopefully less rain in these areas, but that still could be an issue. There's some of this back building of rain further southwards. We'll have to keep an eye on that. But yeah, numerous hours, at least 6 hours, maybe as much as 9 hours of heavy rain, and again, falling at rates of 5 to 10 millimetres per hour. That's when we get our 50 to 100 millimetres of rain in those worst spots. You can see as we head into Tuesday afternoon, it looks like for most the heaviest rain clears. Still raining though across western Scotland, but this is where we could see the strongest winds along the southerly flank of the centre of this low sweeps through, and we could see some really, really bad winds there across northern and western Scotland. Now these areas are the most prone to these sort of winds this time of year, so it's not unexpected, but nonetheless it is still a pretty lively system, and we'll look at the wind gusts in a minute, but I wouldn't be surprised if this system got named given the rainfall into Tuesday morning, and then the very strong winds Tuesday into Wednesday, and eventually clears there Wednesday into Thursday. Now, if you look at the mean sea level pressure for this, you can see pressure is generally pretty low through much of the weekend, but then that system arriving Monday into Tuesday, and you see it gets down to around 956 millibars there to the west of Scotland, looking really quite lively there indeed for clearing and a bit of a ridge of higher pressure. If you look at the wind gusts, you can see into Sunday, not too bad, could see 40 or 50, maybe a 60 somewhere, but it's really as we head through Monday into Tuesday, the winds really picking up into the morning behind the weather front. Looking, blustery, 50 or 60, but the really strong winds there arrive Tuesday into the afternoon. Really strong across the Republic of Ireland in the morning, but for most, it's afternoon to evening for Northern Ireland, Western Scotland, Northern England there, and many Irish sea coasts, 60 to 70 widely. Look at this, 80 or even 90 miles per hour there across much of Scotland, especially central, western and northern Scotland. Looking really lively before dying down into Wednesday. The looks of those winds, I'd be highly surprised if we didn't see at least a yellow warning, if not an amber warning, and maybe even this system being named, as this really does look quite severe indeed. Now, if you look at the max temperatures, you can see into Saturday afternoon, not too cold. As I said, most areas into the double digits, but it doesn't feel all too mild, given the cloud, bits of rain, and the stronger winds. Sunday, similar story, even milder, 13 or 14 degrees into Monday afternoon. Again, maybe touching double digits, but cooling down a little bit. Tuesday, though, once that weather front moves through, could even get 15 degrees, so a big warm sector. And then into Wednesday, blustery winds, so will make it feel cooler, but just about double digits in the south, high single digits further northwards, and maybe a bit colder there into Thursday morning, with some slight northerly winds digging in there, but nothing too bad at all. If we do have a look at the longer range now, you can see the westerly flow at the moment, that deeper low arriving as we head into Monday and Tuesday. Really lively, doesn't look that bad here on the sort of larger view, but locally it is a really quite severe system producing those very strong winds. Subsequent days we could see further similar low pressure systems. We'll have to keep a very close eye on that as the westerlies continue to power up during the middle of the month. As I said, some really lively lows further towards the middle of the month. Longer range, we do see the jet stream shift southwards. Could see a bit of high pressure to our north, so there could be some colder air digging in. Not really cold enough to force anything too major. And if we get to the end of this run, you can see it is a strong tropospheric polar vortex towards Greenland, and Iceland are westerly flow. So really no changes here from the GFS. Said the GEM is slightly different. We can see there is, of course, the continuation of what we've got at the moment over the next few days, but later on next week, we even start to build Scandinavian highs early, a sort of 6 days time next Friday, and it does have a go at easterly winds. It does really struggle up against the very strong tropospheric polar vortex, but eventually it kind of gets there. Again, it's not pumping very cold air in, as it really has to battle against the lows to our west, but eventually it's pretty chilly, be frosty, maybe even a little bit of wintriness if we did see more of a proper easterly getting going. So yeah, a very interesting run from the GM today. Nothing too severe, but definitely would be a change. It would turn us to a much more interesting and potentially a bit more of a wintry pattern there in the lead up to Christmas. The ECMWF, though, doesn't really support the GM. It's kind of around the GFS, maybe more towards the middle of both runs. Again, we've got a very strong westerly flow. And then longer range, we do see perhaps some cold air trying to drift out of the Arctic. But generally speaking, that block to our north, it's nowhere near strong enough to actually force anything cold our way. And in the end, even though it's slightly less sort of concise with the tropospheric polar vortex towards Greenland, like the GFS, it kind of has a similar outcome, to be honest, with a strong jet stream. So longer range, still hints of a change, but we've had a hint of a change for the last week or so, and nothing really comes to fruition. So that's kind of the line we continue to have to go by until we see a little bit more strong, concrete data. Still do think there will be a change eventually. It's not going to last all winter, but at the moment it doesn't look like it's going to be in the next sort of 5 to 7 days. Maybe outside of that is possible, but even then, not a terribly strong signal for that either. If you do finish by looking at the ensembles, these are the latest GFS, the 6 o'clock run as the midday hasn't fully come out yet. You can see, generally speaking, we are hovering above average over the next week, and then close to average, maybe up and down, further into the longer range. There's definitely some more colder runs appearing today than there have been over the past few days, but again, I wouldn't look at those in too much detail. Probably just most likely big sort of polar maritime air masses coming in from the northwest, probably not anything colder than that. You can see it is pretty relentless with the precipitation really spiking over the coming days. And then further around the middle of the month, there could be a slight lull later next week with a few ridges of higher pressure. But generally speaking, the unsettled and maybe more progressively chilly pattern is likely to develop. And if you finish by looking at the latest ECMWF, very, very similar, hovering in and around average. Not too many colder runs longer term and even more precipitation. So perhaps similar with the overall regime, but more of a southwesterly flow than a northwesterly like the GFS. No subtle differences, but it'll make all the difference near the time between kind of 6 or 7 degrees or 11 or 12. So those sort of differences we're looking at here. Again, though, really lively in the coming days. And if we do look at the sea level pressure, you can see these dips appearing in the coming days, indicating some quite deep low pressure systems. And if we go further northwards to Glasgow, for example, we'd expect to be able to see that big dip there into Tuesday. That's that quite severe low moving through, and you look at the winds picking up there as well. So we need to keep a very close eye on this system into Tuesday. Heavy rain Monday into Tuesday, and then the stronger winds Tuesday through towards Wednesday. Again, at the moment, from the latest UKV, definitely could see it getting amber warnings and maybe even being named. But I think we'll have to see what this evening's runs and tomorrow morning's runs do say before the Met Office will sort of change the sort of what the guidance they've got at the moment. But definitely could be a really quite nasty storm there. So yeah, kind of warning you in advance that is a possibility, and we'll have some further details in tomorrow's video. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed subscribing new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.